Today, I'm going to tell you the story of why the network crashing scene in the social network would never happen today. And it's got more to do with another nerdy entrepreneur than it does with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. So let's get into it. So if you haven't seen it, there's this great scene in the movie The Social Network where the fictional Mark Zuckerberg has just built this website, FaceMash. And the demand for this website is so great that it crashes Harvard's computer network. The reason this happens is that Zuckerberg is using his own computer as the website server, so all the requests to that website are having to go through Harvard's network to get to his computer so that people can use the website. That right there, using your own laptop as a server, is the part of this whole thing that would never happen today, that would be totally unheard of, and I want to explain why that is. First, let's take a trip back down memory lane and remember what it used to be like to do web development. So long before I did web development, at basically any point before 2006, building and deploying a website looked completely different. If you wanted to build and host a web app of any kind of complexity, then you needed to get a server in a data center. And in fact, there's a scene in The Social Network where Zuckerberg asks his business partner Eduardo for more money in order to get a dedicated Linux box. And that is referring to this server that is going to be living off in a data center somewhere. So if you wanted to host your web app, you had to either buy a server or rent one. And if you bought one, then you had to buy it and drive it all the way to wherever the data center was and install it yourself. And that's why I imagine that the fictional Zuckerberg in The Social Network decided to just use his laptop as a server. It's because no one's going to go through all that effort for a silly little side project. Thankfully for developers, things look a lot different now. We have one-click deployments and a whole host of other really wonderful tools that make our lives easier. But where did all these developer-centric tools come from? The seeds of them are in Amazon's 2006 shareholder letter. Hang with me here. I know maybe reading shareholder letters isn't the most interesting thing for everybody, but there's some really important ideas in here. Jeff Bezos, of course, writes the shareholder letter, and he starts out talking about what a new business opportunity has to look like in order for Amazon to pursue it. So to quote him, he says that before we invest our shareholders' money in a new business, we must convince ourselves that the new opportunity can generate the returns on capital our investors expected when they invested in Amazon. And we must convince ourselves that the new business can grow to a scale where it can be significant in the context of our overall company. He also goes on to talk about how this new opportunity must address an underserved segment of the market. And in that same letter, he goes on to talk about a new part of their business that they started that year in 2006, and it was called AWS, or Amazon Web Services. But the thing is, cloud is kind of a bad metaphor. It's amorphous. You don't really know what it's in reference to. It sounds like something just kind of out in the ether, and it doesn't really describe what is actually going on. But Bezos himself has a much better metaphor that he mentions in a TED Talk that he gave in 2007, so 1 year after he wrote this shareholder letter. And in that talk, he uses the metaphor of electricity for understanding the internet age. Now, I love this talk. I highly recommend it. I'll link it below. And in this talk, Bezos is talking about mostly how it's easy to forget, but the dot-com boom and bust was really fresh in people's minds still when Bezos gave this talk. So most of his time in the talk is spent comparing the metaphor of a gold rush to the metaphor of electricity. He spends a lot of time trying to explain why the internet is more like electricity than a gold rush, because a lot of people were saying that the internet was over, that the gold rush was over, and there was nothing kind of new to come. But the electricity metaphor is not only helpful for comparing the internet to a gold rush, but it's also really helpful for understanding cloud in and of itself. So Bezos says that the internet is like electricity, and that electricity was kind of the infrastructure. So we had to do a bunch of work to wire cables underground and to get cities set up for electricity and to get it into everyday homes. But once that had happened, it powered a bunch of new applications. So like, for example, the refrigerator and the washing machine. So he considers those applications that are sitting on top of the infrastructure layer of electricity. In the same way, Bezos considers websites and apps built on the infrastructure of the internet to be the same thing as the apps that were built on top of electricity. So the websites and apps that you and I build are like the washing machine, and the internet's infrastructure is like our electricity. It's this insight that allowed Bezos to create AWS and change the world. He realized that all that work racking and stacking servers and maintaining data centers was stuff that everybody had to deal with, but it wasn't necessarily translating to value to their customers. Basically, all that stuff was just grunt work that was necessary in order to get to building the actual software. So it's like if you had to wire your own electrical cable in order to use your washing machine. It just doesn't make any sense, and it's not the best use of your time or energy. What Bezos realized is that they'd already done the work to scale their infrastructure to become Amazon, and that they could offer that to other people for a fraction of the price. And that has turned out to be a genius insight. Now, I mentioned before that Bezos said in his shareholder letter that they had to think that a new business could grow to be a significant part of their overall business in order to pursue it. And if you look at Amazon's 10K filing, which is an annual report that public companies have to file in the US, you can see that they break down their sales into American retail, international, and AWS. So AWS is its whole own category. So I would say that Bezos guessed correctly when he forecasted that this could grow into a significant part of their overall business. So to bring it back to the beginning, why would the social network crashing scene never happen today? It's because Bezos decided to serve an underserved segment of the market, developers. It's because we don't have to rack and stack our own servers anymore. And it's because just like Zuckerberg and Facebook, another tenacious nerd saw an opportunity to innovate, and he did so, and he changed the way that we build and deploy websites forever as a result. So that's the story. Thanks for following along with me. So if you're still here, consider subscribing. Regardless, thanks so much for watching to the end. Remember, stay hungry, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.